Hey, welcome again to another edition of DV Live at Cannes. It is another gorgeous afternoon here today, and I am lucky enough to be spending some time with Deva Bronson, who's EVP and Global Head of Brand Assurance at Dentsu. Deva, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And as always, we start our session with a little bit of France's finest, so cheers.
Cheers. Salut.
Today we are sampling a wonderful Côte de Provence rosé by Haute. It has an aroma of white peach, I believe.
It's lovely.
Apricot.
It's very refreshing.
And the taste is quite zesty with a little bit of flavor of cinnamon. So there you go. I like it. It's one of the nicer rosés we've had here this week.
Very nice.
And not that Cannes is all about rosé. It's also about marketing and advertising, and that's what we're here to talk about. So Deva, you've been in the agency world for a long time. And I mean that in a good way, not
Thank
like,
you.
like a long time, like why have you made that long? But talk a little bit about, what you're doing today at Dentsu and what your role is and why that's relevant to why we're here.
Absolutely. So about a year and a half ago, I was lucky enough to step into this role, which is, as you said, called brand assurance. Made up term. It's okay if nobody knows what it means. The cornerstone is brand safety, suitability, fraud protection. But we've been able over the last year and a half to expand our purview to include building out a sustainable media practice and also partnering with our diversity, equity, and inclusion team to extend the diversity discussion into ad tech and martech. And then finally, we're partnering with our global legal team to start to work through data privacy and compliance.
Wow. It's so interesting how what started off as seemed to be a pretty straightforward, brand safety type, discussion has become really complex, right?
Indeed.
You're dealing with issues of DEI, you're dealing with issues of you said privacy, of media quality, of looking at things like disinformation and misinformation.
And hate speech.
It really does become a complex issue, which makes your job, I'm sure, fun, challenging, exciting. How do you stay agile? And how does a company like Dentsu stay agile in situations like this?
So we have a really interesting approach. First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my wonderful team who I have the pleasure of working with every day. We happen to be a total of 4 very passionate individuals who are really dedicated to improving responsibility across our entire media ecosystem. We stay nimble by having friends and colleagues in lots of markets all over the world who are also similarly passionate and dedicated to these causes. And we have strict standards that we rely on partners like Double Verify to help us to maintain and to help us to disseminate to our clients. Aside from that, the approach that we have is to go back to the old advertising adage of a mix of art and science. Obviously, we rely on automation, we rely on technology to get us partway there, but we also do apply a human element to provide sort of that double check to make sure that we're doing the right thing, especially as it comes to issues around social and cultural sensitivities.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. We'll get to the kind of automation aspect in a second, but one of the things that I think gets lost sometimes in the discussion, what you do is incredibly important to the brands and protecting brands at Dentsu, but it also, I think what we've seen, and I'm sure you've seen too, is that there's a direct relationship to performance.
Absolutely.
Based on doing the right thing for the brand.
Absolutely.
Better quality media performs better. More suitable media performs better, and I think it's not, brand assurance doesn't live in an island.
It absolutely does not, and that's one of the most important parts of our job, is actively educating and recruiting different folks around our agency network, as well as our clients, around the importance of all of the safety checks that we have within the brand assurance discipline. Additionally, you mentioned performance. I would also mention protecting brand reputation.
Sure.
Because adjacencies to unsavory content or to mis or disinformation can be detrimental to a brand's livelihood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I mentioned automation. You mentioned automation, and I said we'll talk about.
I opened the door.
The automation leads to obviously a discussion around kind of AI and generative AI, and what do you, there's so much buzz around it, both the good and the bad. What do you see from an advertiser's perspective and an agency's role in the advertiser's, investment? What are some of the risks that you're concerned about, or that your advertisers are coming to you saying they're concerned about?
So some of the concerns and the thoughts sort of run the gamut.
Yeah.
You know, it's no big surprise, depending on a particular advertiser's category, business category, there can be different concerns. I think on the surface, the major concern is, what if we start using AI and it sort of runs away with us? There's an interesting piece of work that my colleague in the innovation group was discussing at CES actually this year, where it was just a little experiment he did using automation that made him realize the need for constant re-education and upkeep. So in other words, making ourselves more responsible for the output of automation, and that any AI, any generative AI learns from what we tell it, right? So I think, you know, my number one watch out, and what I tell a lot of people, is we can't take the set it and forget it approach.
Yeah.
We have to constantly make sure that we are paying attention, and then we're improving and we're redirecting where necessary.
That's a really interesting, you know, insight, because of the fact that there's this sense that AI is just going to run on its own and make our lives easier. We'll never have to touch it again. And it's like anything, if it starts going the wrong direction, you could be miles away from, even if you're moving really fast, you're miles away from where you thought you were going to end up. And there's lots of, obviously, negative take. Anything positive that you think, you know, like, what are some of the positive aspects of this from either Dentsu's perspective or your clients you think AI can play a role in?
So I think there are lots of opportunities. I think, you know, some of the struggles that we've had around versioning with creative, around acting on insights, around optimizations. I think there's a lot of learning that AI can do, and then we can have, you know, basically unlimited assistance in areas where we were previously limited by bandwidth of existing teams. I think there is huge potential for us to add back a level of creativity. That's I think what I'm the most excited about.
Yeah, you know, it hopefully gets humans doing what they do best.
Yes.
Which is not repetitive tasks and not, you know, the drudgery, particularly in the agency world, of just kind of the you know, getting the machinery going for, you know, impressions and impression buying, but getting the creative thought behind it, and the creative behind the media planning, and the creative behind selection. So I think that's really cool. It should provide more time for that, hopefully.
Absolutely.
All right, so closing today, you've been at Cannes for a few days.
I have.
What are you looking forward to for the last kind of tail end of your Cannes experience?
Oh, I mean, I have been just overwhelmed in the best possible way. This is my first time here for the festival, so I'm just eyes wide open. I've done so much learning, and I think I've done so much growing professionally in the last 48 hours.
Nice.
I look forward to more. I look forward to participating in new conversations, and really just, you know, forming relationships and, you know, maintaining relationships, a little bit of networking as well, and maybe we'll have some fun.
There you go.
While we're at it.
There you go. It should be fun, right?
It should be fun.
Because that's one thing AI can't do, is have fun.
Right.
But humans can.
We sure
can. So thanks again for joining us, Deva.
Absolutely.
Enjoy the rest of your week, and thank you all for joining us here at DV at Live.